PROs, CMOs, IMEs, why register? Chris Cook, please welcome him with a warm hand of applause. He will be the host of the next panel. This is going to be a microphone, and if you can just let us know what is your panel going to discuss.
Oh,
wow.
What's our panel going to discuss? Well, the title is PROs, CMOs, and IMEs. There's a prize for anyone who knows what all three of those stand for.
Oh my God, what's the price?
Does anyone? I haven't figured that out yet. This bottle of water. So yes, we're here to talk about what I call collecting societies, which are the usually not-for-profit organizations that license all sorts of uses of music and collect money for songwriters and music publishers. I call them collecting societies. Collecting societies don't like being called collecting societies, so sometimes they call themselves PROs, performing rights organizations. It's a bit of an American term, we don't like that. Or CMOs, collective management organizations, or IMEs, which I think is independent membership entity. We'll find out once my panel is up. So basically, everything you need to know about collecting societies and collective licensing is what my experts are going to talk about.
The floor is yours. Once again, also please welcome all the upcoming panelists.
If you all want to come up on stage. So while they take their seats, I will introduce myself, and then I'll get them to introduce themselves. My name is Chris Cook. I run a company in the UK called CMU. We exist to help people navigate and understand the music business. So through our media and through our training courses and through our consultancy business and our events, we help anybody who has any connection with music to understand anything to do with the business of music. I can't help you write songs, I can't help you record tracks, don't know anything about that. But once you've written the song, once you've recorded the track, I can help you from that point onwards. I spend a lot of my life talking about copyright. We've tricked you into a copyright session, really, kind of. I'm going to say a little bit about copyright in a moment, just to make sure everybody is up to speed. But why don't we begin by just getting very quick 60-second introductions from each of you about what you do and the organization representing here today, and we'll start on the far side of the stage.
Thank you. My name is Stefan Hitti. Just remember Shitty, that's my actual nickname. I am an international writer relationship manager at GEMA here in Berlin, and super excited for this panel. Can't wait.
Hi everyone, my name is David. I'm a father of one daughter and two dogs. I'm a surfer. I'm Portuguese and I happen to be a lawyer, a music lawyer. I work since 2011 in the music industry. But I'm here as digital licensing manager and international manager for Unison Rights, which is like a Barcelona-based company. IME, independent management entity.
Management
entity. So we basically manage publishing rights for publishers and writers. And yeah, super happy to be here with some good friends from the industry. Thank you.
My name is Claudia Kempf. I'm head of the membership department at Suiza. This is the Swiss Collecting Societies, Switzerland and Liechtenstein. We cover 2 territories. Yes, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm Daan Determeijer. I run the International Repertoire and Members Department at Buma Stemra, the Netherlands-based society, and have been working in the music industry for 20 years or so. A long time as publisher as well, 10 years or so.
So we have 4, take your pick, PRO, CMO, IMEs on the stage, representing 4 different markets across Europe. Before we get into sort of scrutinizing these guys on what it is that their organizations do and how you as songwriters or publishers or artists can get more out of them, I'm going to do 2 very quick things. First of all, quick show of hands to see who we've got in the room, and then I'm going to give you some very quick facts about music copyright, and then we'll get going with the conversation. So who here is a songwriter? Or composer, or involved in writing rhythm and melody? Okay. Who here is a publisher? Okay, a handful of publishers. Anyone here an artist? You can be more than one of these things. Okay, anyone here a producer? Okay, label, manager, Okay, is anyone here a customer of music? A radio station or a club or a venue? Okay, so we've got a few customers of music and lots of owners of music and music rights. Okay, so we know who's in the room, that's good. So yes, we're here today to talk about collective licensing when the music industry licenses as one. We're talking about the copyright side of the music industry. So I thought just before we get going, just so everybody in the room is up to speed, I have a few copyright facts to share with you on the screen from CMU. So first things first, when we talk about music copyright, I'm sure you all know this, music copyright fact number one is when we talk about music copyright, we're actually talking about two different kinds of copyright, two different sets of music rights. What I call the song rights and the recording rights. The copyright in songs, any combination of rhythm, melody, and lyrics, I'm calling that the copyright in songs. And then the recording, when we record a version of a song. And as far as copyright law is concerned, these are two different things. So it's really important to remember that. In terms of terminology, we often call the song rights the publishing rights. So when we say publishing rights, we just mean the song rights. Here in continental Europe, we sometimes talk about author rights. When we talk about author rights in the context of music, we mean the song rights. Then on the other side of the screen, the recording rights, we sometimes refer to those as the master rights or the masters. And in parts of continental Europe, we refer to those as the neighboring rights. It's a useless term. It has multiple definitions. I wish everyone would stop using it. But under French copyright law, the neighboring rights is another way of talking about the recording rights. Today, we are focusing predominantly on the song rights. The four organizations here on stage, they are representing songwriters and music publishers in monetizing the song rights. In terms of what happens within the music industry, because copyright law treats songs and recordings separately, so does the music industry. So we have two strands of the music industry, both involved in copyright. What I call the music publishing sector, which is all about songwriters and songs, and the record industry, which is all about recordings, artists, and labels. And in most countries, when it comes to collective licensing, there will be one organization working for artists and labels on the recording side, and another organization working for songwriters and publishers on the song side. In some countries, there are multiple organizations doing recordings and multiple organizations doing songs. But again, remember, today we're focusing on the left-hand side of the screen, the song rights and their societies. Just a couple of other quick terminology points before we get into the conversation. Copyright is all about control. Copyright is a legal concept that exists in most countries around the world that gives creative people, so that's most of you, control over the outputs of your creativity. It gives you control in a number of different ways. So as a copyright owner, you have control over the reproduction, distribution, rental, adaptation, performance, communication, and making available. I see that as a subset of communication because otherwise it ruins the symmetry of my slides. These are all the different ways, as a copyright owner, you have control over your songs and your recordings. In the music industry, we quite often refer to the reproduction and distribution controls as the mechanical rights. We may use that term here today, so just so we're clear on what the mechanical rights are. It's a 19th century term relating to pianos that play themselves that somehow we're still using in 2024 to refer to the reproduction and distribution elements of the copyright. The two at the bottom, we quite often group together and variously call the performing rights, and look, another definition of neighboring rights, but in the songwriting community, we tend to talk about performing rights. So today we might distinguish between performing rights and mechanical rights. Last thing to say is, the basic principle of copyright is as follows. If you want to make use of copyright-protected work, of a song or a recording, because the copyright owner has control, you have to get permission. So to carry on from the previous conversation, if you want to copy a load of music onto a server in order to analyze that content, in order to train an AI, that is a copy, and unless you can find some loophole, the copyright owner has control, you have to get permission. And copyright owners usually sell this permission. So as copyright owners, you charge people who want to use your music, and that's how we make money out of copyright, and that's licensing. When we use the term licensing in the copyright sense of the word, that is what we're talking about. And in the music industry, we sometimes license through direct deals, where the actual artist or songwriter or label or publisher negotiates the deal. So advertising sync. If Coca-Cola wants to use your music, they're probably going to come to you as a songwriter or your publisher, to you as an artist or your label to negotiate a deal. Or maybe you hire a sync agent to do the deal in the middle. But in many scenarios, particularly when it comes to the song rights, the music industry employs collective licensing. The industry basically licenses as one. And all the writers and publishers appoint a single organization to license on their behalf. And that organization is a collecting society, or if you prefer, a PRO, or a CMO, or an IME, or if you're really tricky, use also an MLC, which some societies call themselves, weirdly not the MLC. So lots of jargon to basically mean the same thing. So that's my quick introduction. If you want my slides, give me an email address and I will send them you. But now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation here today. And I guess when it comes to these organizations, collecting societies, let's go with CMOs for the rest of the conversation, except when we're talking about IMEs. When we're talking about CMOs, the most obvious thing that CMOs do is they gather all the rights of their members, they issue licenses to users of music, and they collect money from those licensees, and then they distribute that money to the songwriters and the publishers. So why don't we just start at this end of the stage? I mean, in terms of the different scenarios in which you're issuing the license and generating money, when I get that report that an organization called CISAC publishes every autumn that has little pie charts of all the different ways that you guys are generating income, there's lots of tiny little slices which I don't really understand what they are, but there's some big slices of what is bringing in the serious money. So maybe just quickly talk us through, in terms of when you're issuing licenses and collecting money, what are the big revenue generators for you and the members that you're representing?
I think currently for most modern songwriters, online digital rights are the largest part. I think with most new songwriters, it's more than 50% of revenue. And it depends on what type of music you make. If you're a media composer, it's a lot stronger on sync, on mechanical licenses. Live performances can be very big as well, but you have background music when music gets played in stores or in bars. Yeah, there's a lot of ways license, and some places that we are not able to license, but in general we're able to license everywhere where your music is used.
I guess that's interesting, isn't it? Because there is that narrative that nobody makes any money out of streaming. And yet what you've just told us is that the biggest revenue generator for all the writers and publishers that make up the societies actually is streaming income. So it is now
not
a really
just streaming,
important
but
stream.
digital. And
yes, so that would include Netflix, it would include downloads, it would include YouTube.
Yep. VOD, actually, Netflix and such are considered, in some territories, still considered TV, and in some it's digital. So that's a bit confusing as well.
And I guess the key thing is, most of you will know this, but for those of you who are artists and songwriters, I guess when you're releasing music, if you're self-releasing, which most artists do initially, you probably find a distributor, like a TuneCore or an eBay Bands or CD Baby, you upload your tracks, it's streaming away, they're paying you money, but it's really important to realize that those distributors are not doing what you guys are doing. So there's a separate copyright, remember. So the distributor is only licensing the recording right, and then I guess if you are a member of one of your organizations, you are licensing your members' rights to all the different digital platforms.
Yeah, exactly.
I might move now into, so digital and then live and public performance. I guess those are two of the really big revenue streams. Are there any others? Maybe if we just move down on the line, are there any other big revenue streams that we should realize are flowing through these organizations?
Well, for us, the broadcasting rights is a very important income still. It's the most important, and performing and online rights, yes.
So by broadcast, that's both TV and radio?
Yes.
And I guess what was interesting over the last 5 years is during the pandemic, some of these revenue streams took a hit, and then some of them didn't. And I guess, obviously, the most obvious, live music, I mean, I imagine for most of you, disappeared for about a year.
Yeah, but we expected all revenue to go down, but it was, at least in the Netherlands for Besprochen, it was quite well compensated with the revenue coming from digital, for example. So we expected a really big gap, but yeah, that didn't really happen in the end. But of course, live and performance and also background music in some cases got a big dip.
So we've talked about the really big important revenue streams. So we've got live and public performance, background music, we've got digital, we've got broadcast. Are there things which you don't license? So are there scenarios where a songwriter's songs are being used, but actually you're not going to be doing the initial deal? Yeah, come in.
Yeah, I'll go to that one, but I think that because the majority of the people here are like songwriters, and I imagine that there are like indie ones or DIY ones commenting on what you said about distribution companies. I think it's important that for you guys to understand, and I think we all stand in the same position here, that when you go to TuneCore or to DistroKid or to other companies, not naming any specific one, but they used to do only distribution. So the other part that Chris talked about, like the master rights, but nowadays you'll have like a tick in for publishing. And my advice there, if I can give you any, not as music lawyer, but with my Unison hat, is they are just publishing administration companies. They don't collect directly your rights. So every time you tick a box saying, okay, I want you to collect my publishing rights, instead of going directly with Buma, with Suiza, with Unison, or with Gamma, they will be using us to collect those rights. So what you are doing, it's centralizing something, but having an extra dip for that, another cut. So it's another middleman. I'm not saying that they are not good in what they do, but it's an extra cut that you'll have on your royalties.
So I guess so just to that point. So first of all, if you're just using a distributor and you're not ticking that box, the distributor is not collecting any of your song money, your publishing money. It's flowing through the collective licensing system. If you do tick that box, ask yourself, do I need that? Because
Exactly.
you guys are already issuing that license and collecting that money.
Do they actually collect? Because maybe they become your publisher, but you're not represented as a writer still. So it's not always the case that they collect your money. There are cases where you automatically sign up with a CMO, but...
Absolutely. I couldn't let that pass, you know, like, because
Good tip.
some people are just, but regarding what we don't collect, for instance, as an IME, but like what we don't collect, it's sync, for instance. We don't collect sync. Although there are some CMOs who include sync in some deals with the broadcasters for like, you know, like the news and some non-commercial stuff. As an IME, the difference between IMEs and CMOs, one of those, is that we don't collect, for instance, private copying. There are some rights, private copyright or cable retransmission right, that are mandatory collected by the CMOs. So we, IMEs, we cannot collect those rights.
So I guess there's two things there. So first of all, you were going to, that said, when you see the pie chart of all the revenue streams, the sort of the really narrow ones, that would include the so-called private copy levy, sure, which is usually these days coming from device manufacturers. We won't go into the private copy, we don't need to talk about that today. So most CMOs are collecting that, although we'll come back onto IMEs in a moment, but you are not. But I guess sync's the interesting one, isn't it? Because broadcast includes TV, and so we're synchronizing music and TV programs. So in that scenario, you are, in essence, licensing sync into TV. But I guess when it comes to things like movies and games and ads, that's where you're not necessarily getting so involved.
Yes, you have showed us at the beginning the different kind of rights, and actually there are 3 types of rights. One you already mentioned, blank tape levy, but you have the moral rights. The moral rights, they are strictly related to the writer, and in these rights we are not involved into, because it's about paternity and it's about integrity of the work, and we don't decide sync fees or sync. We don't decide on if you want an arrangement being made of your song or a remix. All these kind of permissions or authorizations where you can negotiate some fees are not within our competence. We are just the third type of rights that you mentioned, the usage rights, that where we are your partner and on the remuneration claims.
Yeah, because the guess thing is when CMOs are issuing the licenses, usually you're issuing blanket licenses. So your entire membership's repertoire are part of the license. So I guess that's when this idea of the moral right comes in the scenarios where actually the individual should have the right to say yes or no. Yes, Coca-Cola can use my music. Yes, you can turn my folk song into a metal song. And in those scenarios, a conversation needs to take place. You might then collect some royalties down the line, but that initial deal is going to be separate. We've talked about what everybody knows that CMOs do, which is the issuing the licenses, collecting the money, make sure you're in the system to get paid. But maybe we'll come to the far side of the stage. Let's talk about some of the things that CMOs do beyond issuing the licenses, because actually there's lots of other activities that organizations like Gamer, like Boomer, etc. are doing that perhaps are not so obvious. So maybe we should just talk through some of those.
Sue OpenAI.
That happened this morning, if anyone's not up to date. So, following on from the previous panel.
Yeah, and also, by the way, AI is one of those things that we don't license, hence the lawsuit.
But that's not because you would like to.
We would love to. I think the main thing that most people don't realize how many PRO, CMOs, IMEs do is how much creative work is actually done around sort of like the standard day-to-day business operational-wise. And so I know we had a lovely lunch before and we realized like, oh, we all do some sort of collaborative songwriting camp sessions, whatever you want to call it. We recently had a camp with STEM writers together here in Berlin. Boomer Stemmer is doing the same thing. I think this is the one really big subject that people don't realize how much we do. And since I see a couple faces of a lecture that I had last Friday here in Berlin at a university, we educate. We do go to mainly universities, but also to this. You know, we try to show people like, look, we don't just collect money and redistribute it and basically like are a little bit like a union for writers, if you will. We are not. Please don't sue me over that. But it is a bit of like a collective for writers, publishers, anybody who creates, in our case, music. And I think that part is often overlooked, that it is a collective on top of being technically a financial institution.
So yeah, so we've got the educational role of reaching out, and I guess particularly for people early on in their career who are understanding all of this for the first time, but sometimes particularly when we get into digital and AI, it's actually educating every single songwriter and publisher. And then there is that creative role of organizing events that bring writers together to create or sometimes to discuss issues and professional development. Is there anything else we'd like to throw in terms of what your organizations are doing?
I think the public affairs side is very important as well. As a collective, we are able to influence politicians, big companies, lawmaking, getting fairer payments for songwriters, which still isn't the case if you compare to the master rights. So I think a very important role of societies is the public affairs side. So yeah, don't underestimate that. Also, if you know, theoretically you should be maybe able to claim your own rights with every big company, but you know, knock on Google's door and say, hey, my song is being used, and they won't answer. So you need that collectiveness to...
Power of the collective.
Exactly.
But not a trade union. Yeah.
Yeah, we have, I don't know if all of us have this, but we have also a social fund. We have a pension fund. Some societies have pension funds. So when you're retired, with suicide is 63, then you are retired. You get a kind of a guaranteed income until you're dead.
That's as a member.
As a member, yes. So we have also a social function, or if you are in need during the pandemic, I think a lot of the CMOs have built up a fund to help our members in need. And we have this fund also when there's not a pandemic, if our members are in need, financial need because of illness, accidents, dental costs. We were talking about dental costs in Switzerland. We have to pay our dental costs by our own. So as a writer, this can cause you problems, so we can help quite quickly.
Just one thing to add, to bring it back a little bit to the core business. I don't think we have a lot of music customers in the room, but this is also something that people don't generally understand. When you obtain a license from one of us, you also have legal soundness that you are doing everything right. So like you buy a license from GEMA or anybody anywhere in the world, you know that I am allowed to use that specific song for what I am planning on using it. And So like that writer also can't come around the corner and say like, hey, you know what, you used my song, where's my money? So I think this is also something for the customer side, you have legal protection in that regard.
So we've been brainstorming this list of all the things that these organizations do. We understand the licensing, the collecting money, the key revenue streams, some of the sort of smaller revenue streams, and all of the support. And I guess for any members of Gamer or any of the other CMOs in the audience, I guess some of the writers and indeed some of the publishers, some of this may be coming as a surprise. And I guess, I think most of your organizations, you are membership organizations. And I guess the advice would be to be getting in touch, reading the emails, keeping an eye on social media, to participate in all of these schemes and support initiatives and to inform them, to get the absolute most out of your organizations.
Yeah, maybe one point we have been discussing it when we were preparing this panel is that we are issuing codes. And these codes are...
the data points.
Yes, are crucial. We issue the ISWC. When you register a song, and we are registering the song in our systems, then the CMOs are creating the ISWC. This is the International Standard Work Code. It's the lesser-known, smaller brother of the ISRC, the recording code that is... better known, but the ISWC is the unique identifier of a composition. And we all work with the same code. So a song normally should have just one ISWC. This is one code that we are issuing, and another one is the IPI. It's the interested party information number. Suiza is administering it on behalf of CISAC and BM, our umbrella organizations. But every society, when you join in a society, is issuing your personal identifier, the IPI number. This is a really important number. If you if you're a creator, you have a number in the IPI system. It's not only the musical creators, but also if you are writing books or you're a film director, it's always one number you have. It's for individual persons and for legal entities. And so you are recognized when you're going in China to a studio and working with someone, give the IPI number, and the Chinese society will know who you are. And they will know who you are, with which society you're affiliated, and which society, if you're affiliated with several society, deals with which of your rights. So this is all registered in the IPI. So yeah, it's crucial nowadays if you want to make the most of the money.
No, I always look at it as in each country, the music industry only knows your song exists if it's in the database, and the database is the database run by the CMOs. And obviously in many countries, some countries there is formal copyright registration where there's a government registry where you can register. In many countries there isn't. And even if there is, actually, as far as the industry is concerned, it's these databases that matter. So making sure every work is registered, an ISWC is then issued, IPI to all the collaborators. Without that data, you don't get paid. And I know lots of songwriters who don't get paid.
That can't be stressed enough. Get your metadata in order as soon as possible. As soon as you have a song or a release, preferably before release, register it with the proper metadata, because there's a lot of things possible nowadays with machine learning and data, etc. But if you spell a name wrong and you don't have the IPI or whatever, systems get into conflict and the money doesn't know where to go, so to say. So just, the most important thing as a songwriter to be doing, register with a CMO or an IME and get your administration on order, just like any profession. And if you're not able to do it yourself, sign up with a publisher or get a manager who does it. But really, really important, get that metadata in order.
Okay, so I think we've covered all the basics, what the societies are doing, the different revenue streams, the other support, the data. So maybe let's get into a bit of nitty-gritty about terminology and how things work and how things have changed. Let's come to this IME CMO question, which we've kind of alluded to at various points, because I guess in terms of PRO, CMO, in many ways they just mean the same thing. The Americans tend to talk about PROs, and in Europe we're more likely to talk about CMOs, whereas IME is something distinct. So maybe explain to us what that term is and why, therefore, Unison is a little bit different to the other three organizations here on the stage.
I will be the most diplomatic as I can. So basically, one of the things that we cannot do as CMO as IMEs, collect some of the rights that we were talking about. There are rights that are expressively reserved for CMOs to collect.
And that's where either the law or the government or both have
Yes.
said, for this right, this organization is going to distribute the money.
Correct. Some are due to national legislation, and others, I don't want to get very legalish here, but others are through European directives or regulations that mandate that. One important thing to know, because I used to work in I call it traditional, not subjective, but objectively traditional CMOs. I worked there before, and when I moved to an IME, which is like it would do the same thing, but we are for profit, and we are not controlled by the rights holders. We are not controlled by the publishers and the writers. We are a for-profit company, and that's the main difference in terms of like legal difference. But when I came from traditional CMO to IME, apart from all the friends that I kept, but many people said, okay, you are moving to the dark side. And I would like to make it clear that this is not black and white. We work with several CMOs, for instance, for offline collections where we cannot collect directly. We use this network of agreements with the societies here. But I think it's very important to stress that since 2014, you guys, songwriters and publishers, you have a choice, and that choice doesn't need to be, oh, I want to be Gamma or Unison. I want to be Suiza or Booma. No. Since 2014, and it's very clear, you may choose to put, for instance, your digital rights with Gamma, your broadcasting rights with Booma, and your private copy or blanket tape with Suiza.
Now, why would you tell that anybody?
Sorry?
Now, why would you say that here?
But I think it's important that people know that it's not like, oh, I choose Gamma or Booma or Unison. No, you can choose for each type of rights which society or which CMO or IME it's better for you. And another difference, and you stressed it out.
Maybe just add something also for each territory. Not just
Also for each
rights.
territory, and to be discussed if for separate catalogs, but that's another discussion. In Finland, it's possible, but yeah.
Just to clarify that, so as well as splitting up your revenue streams, you could be working with different CMOs in different countries.
Absolutely, and you can have like a CMO like Booma or an IME like Unison or Gamma or Suiza to license your digital rights multi-territorially, where you centralize the collections in one entity, so you only have one cut. When I say cut, it's the administrative fee, and you have all the information together instead of having 27 or 28 reports. But one important thing, and I was raising my hand when you were telling what CMOs do that it's important besides collecting, and you talk about illness and disease, so it's very important also, and I'm here to be very transparent. We only have one commission at Unison, so normally it's a 10% commission. We don't have extra deductions like the fellows here do, but we don't offer any social or cultural support. So if you want to join Unison, for instance, for any type of like digital usages, don't expect us to help you if you are sick or if you want support for a new album. No, we have this commission, we don't have extra commissions, but we don't do that. We don't do this rule that CMOs do. So I'm being the most transparent as I can.
And I guess what you're alluding to there with that 2014 as being a key date, I guess traditionally, you'll all be able to find exceptions to this to go back further, but traditionally, generally, every country had a CMO for songwriters and publishers. They issued licenses in their home country. A blanket license, pretty much every song you could imagine being licensed, but they didn't license in other countries. And so, Gamer would allow Booma to represent its rights in the Netherlands, Booma would allow Gamer to represent its rights in Germany, and you didn't really compete. And most writers generally joined their local CMO and were probably not even aware there were any other CMOs, unless they got big in America and someone told them to join ASCAP. And I guess what we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, partly under pressure from the European Union, partly under pressure from the music industry, and partly under pressure from the CMOs themselves, is the one-stop-shop blanket license on a territorial basis, on one level, is brilliant. If I'm a radio station, the fact I can get one license, brilliant. If I'm a songwriter who doesn't like admin, the fact that I fill out one form and I'm represented for the world, brilliant. But it does then create some competition law concerns, because then the EU regulators will say, it kind of looks like you're monopolies in your countries. So there's been a lot of work to get you guys. So weirdly, I always think the CMOs, you're doing two things concurrently. As you said, you're still collaborating every single day of the week. You are still representing each other's rights. You're constantly working together on this side. And then on this side, you're ruthlessly competing with each other because you've got to provide the best services to get in there. And I guess in amongst all of that, then there was digital, wasn't there? And digital changed it. So you are now, particularly when it comes to the digital platforms, licensing beyond your borders. And maybe one of you could jump in and sort of explain how those multi-territory deals on the digital side are different to the traditional radio, TV, live performance deals.
I mean, I think it basically comes down to that it's no longer territory-driven, but repertoire-driven. And it doesn't make sense if, you know, your music is used globally and it's online. You can easily make a deal from Amsterdam with a company in Japan, the same way as a company in Japan can do it nowadays digitally. And it's mostly for efficiency, for lowering of fees, of lessening the possibility of leakage, data transparency. There's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to do it, but at the same time, yeah, it does also cause competition, which makes us less monopolistic and more like a commercial company trying to improve our services and business as well. So it's tricky because we're dependent on each other, and we wouldn't be able to survive without each other. But at the same time, it also puts everyone on putting their best feet forward, so to say. And now it's only digital, but everything is data, and in the future it could also be live broadcast, everything, you know, because everything is data. So yeah.
And I guess in practical terms, it means, whereas, correct me if I'm wrong here, if I'm a gamer member and my track gets played on the radio in the Netherlands, Boomer's going to collect the money under the traditional system. Correct. But if it's streamed on Spotify in the Netherlands, you're getting the money directly from Spotify under the gamer license.
It's, to be honest, like the whole collaborative nature of us, but then talking about digital is also really funny because it's a bit like you literally have the three entities in Europe who all work with separate digital hubs. So obviously GEMA collaborated a couple of years ago with STIM in Sweden and PRS in England and founded ICE. And then Suiza obviously has Mint, and Boomer is working on Salt, I believe. So it's kind of funny that like it's in a nutshell, it's being collaborative but still competing with each other because we do work on digital solutions that each of us think may be more beneficial for the system that we're trying to build or have.
So I guess when we talk, so the big trend that's happened when it comes to digital, first of all, as CMOs, you're licensing multi-territory, whereas traditionally you only did in your home country. And then, yes, those licensing hubs, or whatever we want to call them, those organizations where a lot of CMOs collaborate on digital licensing, partly because the digital services don't like doing too many deals. And so if you can reduce the number of deals, the digital services are happy. Also, there's a huge amount of infrastructure you have to build around digital licensing, and why build it 6 times if you can build it once?
But the competition is also good, you know, because like anything that has competition, you know, it's a different thing if, for example, CMOs or PROs or whatever have to negotiate with Spotify or Apple. Imagine if you all of a sudden have 3 online rights hubs, let's call it that way, and they all negotiate with Spotify separately for certain rates and deals. We all benefit because, like, you know, maybe Suiza is in a position that they are going to negotiate this year, and we have to wait another 2 years, and then we can say, like, oh, okay, you know, like it's going to go up eventually. So the competition generally is always good. There is plenty of work for everybody, especially in the music industry, and I think the one doesn't exclude the other.
And I think competition is also good for the creators because we have to improve our services to be, as you said already, more transparent, more efficient. We all try to make the most money for our members, so for the creators it can be a good thing that there is competition.
I've got 2 last questions in our 6 minutes left, so we'll have to get some punchy answers to each of these. So I guess the first one, these may well be summarizing things you've already said, but I guess in terms of the people in the room who are writers and publishers who are members of one or more CMOs, how can they get more and the most out of their CMO, whether that's in terms of revenue or whether that's in terms of support or any combination? So let's start on the far side.
Register your songs. The minute they come out, don't wait 3 months, 6 months, because then the money's gone.
So register songs
And
quickly.
agree who is registering the song, because sometimes if you're collaborating, everyone thinks that the other will register the song. So really, this is, yeah.
And especially if the writers
Really?
are members of different CMOs, coordinate how you're doing all of that as it's being logged. Anything else that we can be doing to get the most out, whether it's revenue or support?
Get in touch with your CMO. You know, a lot of publishers can do a lot of work for you, but if you're, especially if you're an independent artist or independent-minded, get in touch with your society and you know, tell them about things that go wrong. We're not there to do things wrong. It's not in our benefit to do things wrong or to miss royalties. So just communicate with us and let us do the work for you. You know, so communication.
And don't sign anything you don't understand, or click on buttons.
Yes.
Tick buttons you don't understand, and don't be ashamed if you don't understand. I mean, we have legal advice. There are a lot of associations with free legal advice where you can go to check the contracts or read the terms and conditions. If you buy beats, we regularly we get registration with beats, but you can't do anything with the beat you have bought. So yeah.
I totally agree with what they said, and I think that some people don't understand. That would lead to a different panel, but the importance of music publishers and managers, by the way. But many of you, even if you are indie, if you get like this overview, and you can get it with the metadata that you currently get even from distro platforms on how your repertoire is performing worldwide, then you can make wise choices on where to register and with whom to register for which territories and usages.
We talked about some of the ways in which CMOs and what they do have changed over the last 10, 15 years. So finally, if we look ahead to the next 5 years, what do you see as being either a big challenge or a big opportunity or both for CMOs? Maybe we'll start at this end and work our way down.
I mean, AI is an obvious one, but I would also say gaming in general. Gaming is an area where licensing is very tricky, and it's such a big market. So I think that's a really important market for us.
And I guess gaming traditionally began with the big sync where there would be a direct negotiation, but now we're in the Fortnite world,
For
the
hit
Roblox
repertoire,
world.
yeah. But
there's music's being used in those environments.
Yeah, and they have their in-house composers making everything,
yeah.
And if you want to make something for them, they buy out all the rights. They're not licensing to what it's valued.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tricky world.
AI and gaming.
I would say AI as well. We all together have to take care of the musical ecosystem. I think AI has a lot of chances for us as well. We do a lot of administrative work that AI can help us, but we have to be careful on the output side that it's not too invasive, that in the end the creator is not becoming an endangered species. So I think we all do this, our job to get to support the creation and creators, and we shouldn't forget that in the center of all our activities are still the creators.
I would say, like, in terms of licensing, the same, AI and gaming, I totally agree. But also a third layer would be to get even better deals from the current licensees that we have, like the DSPs and the UGC platforms. On a second level, in the next 5 years, I think it's important to talk about decentralization of the identifiers. I think Suiza is doing a great job with the IPI, controlling it for CZAC. And I know that there are projects with the ISWC, but I think the question about should the ISWC be controlled by one unique entity, we need to bring that discussion to the table and other discussions regarding the identifiers, because we know that the global repertoire database failed, but we need some solution that matches both identifiers, master, and the third thing, it's getting the publishers and the writers to have more freedom of choice, because despite the directive, there are still some ongoing practices in the market that limit the choice for music publishers to choose what they want to do with their rights.
So more flexibility.
Especially outside of Europe, for example.
Outside of Europe, it's not the case with you, but inside Europe, it's not the case with Booma, but yeah.
Finally.
Well, obviously AI. I think if you break it down even more, I think over the next 5 years, because we are at the brink of new technologies dominating everything, I think we also need to approach AI with open arms, because it has the potential to make us faster, cheaper, more accurate, more transparent. All the things that we constantly preach, and I doubt that any organization can do that to the extent that they would like to. And I think this is the biggest flex that Apero can have. We are cheaper, we can do it faster and more accurate, and people whose music is used are actually getting paid, be it through new technologies in music recognition, software. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, on top of having Elon Musk. I don't know.
So understand the different revenue streams, understand the other support that might be available, make sure you're getting that support if it is available, understand the data and making sure your works are all logged, understanding the changes that are happening. There's more flexibility, there's more choice, there's more competition. That only works if people use that choice and use that flexibility and use that competition. And AI, both a challenge and an opportunity. 3 very quick things, we are out of time, but I'm back later doing a speed briefing, 30 minutes on the diversifying digital market. So I will tell you, of all the digital platforms out there that aren't Spotify, which ones are bringing in money today, which ones may bring in money tomorrow, what are the challenges and opportunities. Can we get my QR code back up if you want the slides, if you send me an email address. We also have some masterclasses on licensing. We'll give you a discount code. So if you give me an email address, then we'll send you all that information. We're out of time, but these guys are around. So if you have any specific questions, then grab these guys. There's another session coming up here quite soon, but grab us here, downstairs, outside. Come, whether it's general CMO questions, if it's a specific CMO question, try and name it to the right CMO. But the guys are more than happy to answer your questions. We're going to wrap things up there. Thank you very much for listening. Can I have a round of applause for my panel? Thank you.